I'm the manager of project development here at MetroPlan Orlando, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Today's program is going to focus on options for embedding safety into transportation capital projects. And we've gathered a fantastic panel of experts who are going to share various options for advancing projects that feature safety countermeasures through the project development process. Next slide, please, Rachel. So developing a strong, previous slide. Developing a strong traffic safety culture is essential for saving lives and preventing suffering on our roadways. Each year, thousands of lives are lost and many more are changed forever due to preventable traffic deaths. Transportation safety projects play a key role in this effort as they address dangerous infrastructure, promote safer driving behaviors, lead to more reliable traffic flows, and help reduce economic burdens caused by those crashes. And most importantly, safety improvements can help build that mindset where safety is both a shared responsibility and second nature. Next slide, please. So I think we can all agree implementing transportation safety projects is essential, but it's far from easy. One of the biggest challenges often is funding. Many projects are delayed or scaled back due to unpredictable or insufficient financial support. We'll deal with that. And even when that funding is available, technical and or environmental complexities like compliance with environmental regulations can slow our progress. Data limitations sometimes are another barrier. Without accurate crash or traffic data, it's difficult to target the right areas or measure our results effectively. And then there's the human factor. Risky behaviors like speeding or distracted driving are hard to change and require not just infrastructure fixes, but also education and enforcement. And then gaining that public support can also be difficult. People may resist changes like lowering speed limits or new traffic patterns, even if they are safer. And then finally, we have our institutional barriers to contend with. Fragmented authority or lack of coordination between agencies can stall even the most well-planned projects. But despite these challenges, collaboration and shared commitment to safety can help us move projects forward and save lives. As you listen to our panelists today share their approaches for delivering safety improvements, we encourage you to consider how these strategies may apply in your communities. Next slide, please. With that brief introduction, I'd like to kick things off by introducing our panelists today. To start us off, we have a trio joining from our Florida Department of Transportation District 5 to share how they're baking safety into their scoping and design processes. Lorene Bobo is going to kick us off. Lorene started her career with FDOT in 1999 as a professional engineer trainee. She eventually focused in construction and maintenance as a project engineer and project manager, and then went on to lead the $2.3 billion I-4 Ultimate project as the program manager. She then served as the District 5 Director of Transportation Development. And in June 2021, Lorene began her role as the safety administrator for the new District 5 Office of Safety, ensuring the district's focus on safety to support Target Zero. Also from FDOT, we have Celine Bounds, who started her career with FDOT in 2018 as a structures intern. After graduating from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, she joined the FDOT D5 Roadway Design Group, and in 2022, Celine began serving as the scoping manager for FDOT District 5. She currently leads a team responsible for scoping arterial and interstate resurfacings, traffic operations projects, safety projects, and request projects. And our final presenter from FDOT is Megan Owens, who has been working with the department for 18 years this November, with 10 of those years in project management. Megan is a proud wife and mom of 3 girls and is looking forward to the birth of her first grandchild in August. Following our FDOT presentation, we'll have Taylor Laurent, my colleague here at MetroPlan Orlando, who will share how we've adapted our long-range planning processes to support implementation of safety projects. Taylor is the manager of transportation planning here at MetroPlan, and she and her team manage our core MPO products, including our long-range plan, our TIP, and our bridge document, the prioritized planning list. Taylor brings a variety of experience developing context-sensitive solutions for the future of our transportation system to her role here at MetroPlan, and she also serves on the AMPO Technical Advisory Committee. And to round out our presentations today, we will hear from our final panelist, Chris Wierzbicki, about how the city of Bainbridge Island in Washington State is delivering safety through their sustainable planning efforts. Chris was appointed as the Public Works Director for the city of Bainbridge Island in July 2019, having previously served the city as the city engineer and the deputy planning director. Prior to joining the city, Chris served as the executive director of the environmental nonprofit FutureWise and the deputy director of the King County Department of Transportation Road Services Division. Before I turn things over to our first speaker, A quick reminder that you can use the Q&A button that's on your toolbar to ask questions throughout our program today. We'll answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A session after all of our speakers have finished their presentations. And with that, Lorraine, turn it over to you.
Very good. Thank you very much for inviting us to share about the process that we at FDOT go through to move our projects forward. We believe that every project is a safety project, whether it comes through as a resurfacing project or as a maintenance effort. Safety is always on the forefront. Next slide, please. Today, we would like to share a bit about the process a project goes through to be developed. We seek to understand what is going on in that corridor and how we can best address any issues that are identified, while balancing our resources across the 9 counties that encompass District 5. Today, you will hear from Celine Bounds, who is our scoping manager. She sees nearly every project that comes through our process. And then Megan Owens. Megan is in our consultant project management group. They take the projects from scoping and they bring them through design and pass them on to construction. Next slide. This is FDOT's compass. While all of these 6 elements are important to providing the best transportation system for our residents and visitors to Florida, you will notice communities are at the center and safety is at the top. This is not just a coincidence in the graphic, this is by design. You will hear today from Celine and Megan that we seek to understand what the community wants in a project. Those conversations are through every single stage of the project, and we strive for that enhanced and continued collaboration throughout the project. I'll now invite Celine Bounds to share her team's efforts through the scoping process. Thank you.
All right, next slide, please. All right, thank you, Lorraine. Hello, everybody. I'm Celine Bounds. I'm the District 5 Scoping Manager, and we're going to be covering how we scope for safety. Next slide, please. All right, I don't know if anybody here is a fan of Dr. Seuss, but the quote on the left is from Horton Hears a Who, in which Horton says, "A person's a person no matter how small." And I thought this really summarized how I feel about the projects that we scope. So I created my own version of the Dr. Seuss quote saying, "A project is a safety project no matter how small." And this quote really serves as my reminder that regardless of the size of the project, each project does have an element of safety out there for our users. Next slide, please. So with that quote in mind, let's talk about some of the different types of projects that we are responsible for scoping. So we have many different types of projects that we scope, and on the screen I have some of them listed here. Safety looks different on every project, given the type of scope, the context of the road, the nature of the corridor, and the demonstrated needs. So we're going to go through a couple of those today. So the interstate projects are identified by our district maintenance office and are coordinated with central office. These focus on cross-slope correction, pavement rehabilitation, resetting guardrail, and potentially more depending on the number of interchanges as well as environmental surroundings. Next is going to be our arterial resurfacing projects and our pavement-only projects, also known as POP projects. These are both types of arterial resurfacings. These are identified based on pavement condition. Our roadways are assigned a crack, ride, and rut score every year, and any roadway that is assigned a poor score, those typically end up on our upcoming resurfacing list. So those two fall under the same category, but the scope of work is very different. So some of the examples of things 3R projects can include are closing sidewalk gaps, upgrading string poles to mast arms if they're within the coastal boundary, evaluating mid-block crossing opportunities, and installing new warranted signals. Our maintenance resurfacing projects or POP projects include correcting non-compliant ADA curb ramps and rehabilitating the asphalt pavement. It's important to note that 3Rs and POPs are both arterial resurfacings, and only the degree of scope is what differs between the two of them. We do conduct a safety and corridor review on all of our candidate arterial resurfacings to identify projects where the department gets the greatest value with our limited resurfacing funds. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about how this information is presented and how the department makes these difficult decisions. The next type of project on our list are goes with or -2 projects. These are isolated improvements that are identified to go to construction with another project. These can be both department or locally funded, and on the next slide, we'll talk about how these are identified. Safety projects are projects that have been identified and studied by our safety office. Some examples of these are signal rebuilds, signalized mid-block crossings, or the addition of left turn lanes. Traffic operation projects are projects that have been identified and studied by a traffic ops group. These include things such as speed limit changes, new signalized intersections, directionalizing median openings, or installing signalized mid-block crossings. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about our process and hit on some of those things we discussed in the last slide. So ISR is our interactive scope review meeting. This meeting is made up of FDOT technical staff. These people are all our technical strong arms. We invite them to an in-person meeting where they can provide us technical feedback on our draft concept for our scope and highlight anything that we miss. It's important that we have this as an in-person meeting so we can discuss anything that has come up from our local agencies or direction from other departments, so they have the background as to why the scope is to whatever degree of safety that's presented. Next, we have our TRM meeting, which is our technical review meeting. This is an in-person meeting for the purpose of engagement. It is made up of our cost center managers and our leadership. They are responsible for determining the scope of work. So we present that safety and corridor review. So every project that is an arterial resurfacing, whether it is POP or 3R, our team conducts a safety and corridor review, which includes looking at crash data for correctable patterns that may be applicable to our resurfacing program. And we present that information to our cost center managers and our leadership. We do have our traffic operations and our safety office in the room. They are able to inform us of any overlapping studies or may respond to some of the correctable crashes that we've noticed and potentially partner with us to implement a traffic ops or a safety study into our project. After we've presented all of the safety and corridors for all of our candidate resurfacing projects, all disciplines and leadership agree on the scope based on the feedback from disciplines, locals, and scoping. So we'll talk about the local feedback at the next point. We talk about our stakeholder meetings, but we provide all of the feedback from disciplines being safety, traffic ops, our scoping recommendations based on what we saw in the safety and corridor review, as well as our local agencies' input. Some of these difficult decisions are because we have to determine the number of 3R and POPs that we can program based on a program-wide view. So we're looking at all of our candidate resurfacing projects and considering our limited projected resurfacing allocations. Lastly, we have our scoping stakeholder meeting. This is an in-person or virtual meeting. We offer both options to our local agencies. This includes our MPOs and our TPOs, as well as our cities or counties. And this meeting really is intended to be an information gathering session. We understand that our locals know more about these roads than we do from our crash data. They know a lot more about the patterns and things. They experience those near misses that our crash data might not point to. So we rely heavily on them to share their feedback and understanding of the corridor. We also discuss partnering opportunities at these meetings. So those -2 and goes with projects we referenced on the previous slide, that is the opportunity for if the local agency is interested in funding an opportunity, this would be the time to bring that up. And then we would look at potentially adding that to the scope of the project if it's a 3R, or to program as a -2 for a maintenance resurfacing project or a POP if the local agencies have the funding. So the goal of this slide really is to drive home that scoping is a collaborative effort and that the safety is on every single project. So all of our meetings are pivotal and important. They're in person to ensure that we have focused attention and dedication to the dedication and focus from our decision makers. There are multiple disciplines in making these scoping decisions. We have a very collective decision-making group to determine the appropriate scope of work. It's not just one person, it's not a black box, everyone is involved. And then lastly, it's critical that our local agencies and partners are included and have the opportunity to contribute safety on all of our projects. And on the next slide, you're going to hear from Ms. Megan Owens on the design and CPM side of things.
Thank you. Previously, Celine discussed some of the different ways that new projects can come to be. Next slide, please. On this timeline, you'll see that a project design schedule typically lasts 18 to 24 months, depending on the scope of work. Throughout the schedule of a project, there are several activities that occur as checkpoints with our local partners and the community, such as stakeholder meetings, plan reviews, and open house style public meetings, to name a few. In addition, we house project information online at cflroads.com, including schedules and budget information, project flyers, presentations, and other project materials that may be beneficial to those looking to learn more about a project. FDOT continues collaboration and engagement with community and stakeholders to ensure that we're building the right project for the community. Our local agency partners are experts on the corridors in their area, and we value their input. While we prefer to have any local requests identified and defined during scoping, we understand that conditions can change, and we try our best to account for those changes in our designs. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple of examples on projects where we've kind of had to pivot, and we'll give some examples of what we had to do. So for this project here, it shifted gears from a resurfacing to a maintenance resurfacing. After that occurred, the city of Castleberry approached FDOT with concerns about pedestrian safety within the corridor. The FDOT project manager and design team worked diligently with the city to identify and incorporate safety improvements that were low budget and that provided the highest impact to corridor users. This was done through the use of a local funding agreement, also a -2, like Celine mentioned before. Next slide. Similar to the previous project that I discussed, this project changed directions and was made a maintenance resurfacing as well. We received a request from traffic operations to move forward with a mid-block crossing, and they were able to procure the funding for the rectangular rapid flashing beacons and upgrade those to solar as well. Next slide. Okay, this is another example of a project on US 192. It was a maintenance or a resurfacing project scope with a new pedestrian crossing at Town Center Drive. Unfortunately, a fatality occurred at that location during design. So we considered additional options and then proved the most feasible concept was the original concept and moved forward. Next slide. Okay. To help ensure continuity from design to construction, pass the torch meetings are being conducted to ensure that construction staff and contractors understand the purpose of the project design and why specific features have been included. Additionally, our project managers will pass along any coordination or conversations that we had during design with the local agencies so that they can benefit from this knowledge as well. We understand that introducing new safety features can create some tension within the community, and FDOT is making an effort to stay involved with the community and incorporate those lessons learned from one project to the next. During the design of a project, we continue to coordinate using tools like graphic renderings and videos of proposed improvements, and we also include the safety office to ensure that local agencies are informed and receive educational material about the safety features being included in their projects. All of this is done to make sure that the project fits the vision of the community and is successful throughout design and well after construction is complete. Next slide. And we would like to end on a safety second because it takes just a second to be safe. Next week starts a speed enforcement campaign across the Southeast states called Operation Southern. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, that was a great presentation, Lorraine, Celine, and Megan. I'm excited to be able to follow up on yours. So hello, everyone. I am Taylor Laurent, and I'm excited to be able to share with you the many ways in which we are incorporating safety into our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Rachel, if we can transition to the next slide, please. Oh, thank you. There we go. Okay, so safety has been included in Metro Plan Orlando's work for decades, but it had a very strong leap forward a few years ago when we were awarded a Safe Streets and Roads for All federal discretionary grant. The grant was used to help us vastly accelerate our region's shared vision and goals for improving safety in Central Florida. With the funding, we were able to develop 23 Vision Zero safety action plans from 3 different perspectives: the overall regional perspective from the MPO, each of our 3 counties' perspectives, as well as each of our 19 cities and towns. Metro Plan Orlando's regional plan set the foundation for the work and opened the door for us to be able to collaborate with our counties, cities, and towns to develop individual safety action plans for each of their organizations. And this top-down and bottom-up approach allowed us to look at the whole transportation system within Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties to identify projects and countermeasures from the regional, county, and local perspectives. Now, as we were finishing these 23 safety action plans, we were also starting to update our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. The MTP is our 25-year vision for transportation infrastructure and serves as the foundational planning document for all projects funded by Metro Plan Orlando. Projects need to be included in the long-range plan before they can be shortlisted for funding on our prioritized project list or funded in our transportation improvement program. Now, the 2050 MTP is made up of 5 basic parts. The first being how we use our transportation system today and looking at and evaluating the background data and existing conditions. From there, we need to develop shared goals and objectives for how we want the transportation system to be in 2050, those 25 years from now, and exploring the drivers of change or the future trends that will influence the path that we take to achieve those goals. And a lot of the technical analysis that is performed is intended to help us develop a transportation needs assessment to ultimately create a cost feasible plan outlining which of the identified transportation projects could feasibly be accomplished within this 25-year planning horizon. And of course, including public and agency participation and feedback throughout the entirety of the process, so that way we have consensus when the plan is ultimately adopted by the Metro Plan Orlando Board, which will be later this calendar year. Now, safety has been included in our long-range planning process for decades, like I've mentioned earlier, but we purposefully ramped up our efforts in 4 key areas of the 2050 MTP to be able to incorporate the excellent work from our recently completed Vision Zero safety action plans. And that includes in our goals and objectives, technical analyses and needs assessment process, as well as in the development of the cost feasible plan and the funding policy used to create that. So I'll be highlighting exactly how we've incorporated and elevated safety for these 4 topics over the next several slides. Now, as I mentioned, safety has traditionally been woven into our long-range transportation planning process for a while now, and has been included as one of the goals of the 2050 MTP. And similarly to what Laureen mentioned with her graphic, safety is not at the top of this list by accident. We are keeping it as the first goal listed in the 2050 MTP documentation as we move forward. But we have revised the specific language and updated the safety goal to more clearly weave in the safety action plan concepts and recommendations that we've been working on as a region. And we are including the focus on a safe and secure transportation system with that vision of 0 deaths and serious injuries. And we're also taking this opportunity to expand our view of safety to also include preparations for and responding to emergency events and reducing the potential for harm for people who are using the transportation system. There we go. Now, there are 3 key objectives associated with the safety goal, and they're also similarly modeled on those core elements that I just mentioned, eliminating those deaths and serious injuries on the transportation system, but emphasizing the focus on our most vulnerable roadway users. Also providing that transportation infrastructure and services to help maintain, prepare for, respond to, and recover from, I think we covered the whole spectrum there, from various emergencies, and increasing the resilience of our transportation infrastructure to various risks. And an example of a risk that I usually mention this time of year for Floridians, it's hurricane season. That's always top of mind. We want to make sure our transportation system is there for us if and when we need it. So then our needs assessment is the second area where we are elevating our safety game. And this is the process through which we identify the transportation needs in Central Florida by looking at the infrastructure that we have today, what we have now, and then looking to what we want or need to have or desire to have by 2050. And the differences between those two items are where we develop our transportation needs list, so that we have a transportation to-do list of our desired transportation improvements for the next 25 years. So the needs assessment for the 2050 MTP is organized by the general types of projects included within it, such as complete streets, which allows for multiple methods of travel on a singular system, looking at transit capital improvements, active transportation, which is our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, transportation systems management and operations projects. These are generally technology and other operational type improvements. And then this time we can add a new category for the safety action plan projects that were identified through the grant work that we completed. So these particular projects will be incorporated into what we're calling a high injury network countermeasures category. So that way we know that these projects were directly sourced from one of the 23 Vision Zero safety action plans, and that they're intended to serve as countermeasures to improve safety in the areas that they've identified. One of the other areas that happens after the completion of the needs assessment, so we have our transportation to-do list. So then we need to prioritize those projects, so that way we know the order in which those projects need to be addressed. So prioritization within the 2050 MTP needs to be consistent with our goals and objectives, federal and state performance measures, performance-based planning, which is in our approach both data-driven and locally informed. So within the 2050 MTP's proposed prioritization methodology, safety accounts for 35% of a project's priority score, or 35 points out of 100. And safety is measured using similar methodologies to those that were established within our Regional Safety Action Plan. Again, the focus is on weaving the accelerated safety planning efforts that we performed over the past few years into this MTP update. So that includes looking at regional safety scores, whether a particular project is located on the high injury network at the regional, county, or city or town level from any of those action plans, or if it's located on multiple of those high injury networks. And then looking at speed management and identifying areas where speeding may be occurring and prioritizing those areas for improvements to reduce those speeds. And the last area where we are emphasizing how we include safety is the funding policy, or how we allocate Metro Plan Orlando's federal Transportation Management Area funds, TMA funds, to implement transportation projects. Historically, Metro Plan Orlando has taken a multimodal funding approach by allocating funding across different project types so that a multitude of improvements could be made and move forward together. And in this approach, safety was included. Again, we've had safety as part of our process for a long time, but here it was included within each of the individual projects themselves, as we would not propose implementing a project if it did not improve the safety of the transportation system. But as we look to 2050 and the 2050 MTP, however, we have an opportunity to do something a little bit different. So we have a new set of projects that are directly sourced from our safety action plans in that high injury network countermeasures category. And that new category can now be considered as a candidate for dedicated funding to be able to implement those projects. So as of today, the proposed funding policy for the 2050 MTP will be structured to include the new additional high injury network countermeasure category. So that means we have our transportation to-do lists for each of these project categories. We know the order in which those projects should be addressed. And once we apply the funding policy over the next few months, we will know how many of those projects could feasibly be implemented over the next 25 years. And I'm very excited to have had the opportunity to share all the ways that we have been able to elevate and emphasize the importance of safety in our 2050 MTP, and to be able to do so in as many different ways as we are, from the goals and objectives to the projects on our transportation to-do list and our needs assessment, the way that we prioritize that to-do list, and even into the proposed MPO funding policy to create that dedicated source of funding for those safety improvements. So by intentionally incorporating these safety action plan elements into our foundational planning document within the MTP, our long-range plan, these safety practices will be providing benefits to Central Florida's transportation system for at least the next 25 years. And I believe that's something for which we can all be proud. So thank you for the opportunity to present today. I know we're holding questions until the end, but I will hand it off to Chris for his presentation.
Thanks, Taylor. Real quick, Laura, what time are we trying to move to questions? I just want to make sure I tailor my speech accordingly here. I see you came off mute, but we can't hear you. Okay. Well, I'll try to wrap up by 9:45. So hi, everybody. My name is Chris Wierzbicki. I'm the Public Works Director here at the City of Bainbridge Island, and I am going to give you a little bit of a different spin on safety through sustainable transportation planning, and tell you about some of the projects that are a little closer to the ground that we are doing over here on Bainbridge Island. First, I'm going to tell you where Bainbridge Island is. It's about 3,000 miles from Orlando, so about as far as you can get on the mainland U.S., and give you a little overview of our plans and process, tell you about how we've been implementing projects, and then, of course, we'll have our questions. So where's Bainbridge Island? So Bainbridge Island is shown here in the boundary in red and white there on the map. We are directly across Puget Sound from downtown Seattle in western Washington State. We were incorporated in 1991 as a city, and formerly the island was part of Kitsap County, which you kind of see all on the left-hand side of the island there. There was a small city kind of right where it says Bainbridge Island, about on the bottom left of the island there, was the city of Winslow, and then we incorporated as the entire island in 1991. We have about 25,000 people. We are 27 square miles, about the same size as Manhattan, believe it or not, but a lot less people. We also have lots of critical areas, lots of steep slopes, wetlands, 54 miles of shoreline to deal with. We also have 180 miles of roadways. So while we are a city, we function a little bit more like a county given our size and the amount of infrastructure that we manage. Our community has a fairly established bicycle culture. As you can see here, this is an event where the ferry that goes over to Seattle about 10 or 12 times a day. This is an event called the Chili Hilly, where folks come over and circumnavigate the island by bicycle. We also have quite a few bicycle commuters, people who work in Seattle and ride their bike onto the ferry every day because it's cheaper and better for your health to do that than driving. But we really have a lack of safe bicycle and pedestrian facilities on the island. The picture you can see on the right there is a pretty typical roadway on Bainbridge Island. While we have an urbanized area, we also have lots of rural roads without shoulders, with poor sight distances, really not great conditions for bicyclists. And so we have been working plans and process. We've been working since the city was established back in 1990 to develop a plan for non-motorized improvements for both bikes and peds and trails as well. And what's interesting about our community is that, we're not growing super fast. We're not building a lot of new roadways. So really, we've been having discussions about how to treat our roadways effectively and make them safer for a long time. And it only is just recently that we have finally kind of agreed on a strategy. And so that's a little bit what we're going to talk about today. The strategy that we developed was through a plan called our Sustainable Transportation Plan. We started that work in 2020, adopted it in 2022 with the vision to reduce carbon emissions and improve safety and mobility for all within the community. and that has a focus on complete and connected networks that enhance the island's natural systems and articulates a pathway to implementation. And so that is a unique element of this plan that we're going to talk about in a minute. We had lots of community engagement leading up to how this plan was developed. Of course, COVID happened right in the middle of our community engagement process, so we had lots of online meetings to get people involved in the process. We did all island mailers. We had, we really tried to tap into advocates and others in the community who were passionate about this issue to develop the plan, put it together. The plan ended up having a number of goals that we developed with our city council prior to developing the full plan. This was the kind of the guiding elements of the plan. As I mentioned, climate action and resilience was one of the key elements, as well as retaining natural systems and natural and rural character of the island. Safety and comfort is, of course, there as well, and followed by equity and accessibility. One of our goals was to try and build what we call all ages and abilities facilities for most of our major projects, which is a bit of a different tactic than we had taken previously, where we're just basically building widened shoulders. Doing our best to make the system connected and convenient, and having a plan for implementation and funding. Final document was actually ended up being 2 documents. The Sustainable Transportation Plan itself, which is a great visual looking document that we'll have a quick look at, and a series of working documents, which included some more detailed maps of the types of and locations for projects and the prioritization, as well as potential project costs. Within the plan itself, it kind of looks something like this. It's really a kind of an online focused plan with lots of visuals and graphics. We identified our walking and rolling network around the island. I identified some what we mean by all ages and abilities facilities. And the plan basically summarizes up with 3 different scenarios that we presented to our city council for deliberation and decision. Scenario 1 was what we call the status quo. So these were basically 10-year plans, along with budgetary requirements for getting the projects done. You can see the map here shows kind of a bunch of different locations for projects and project types. The status quo is essentially looking back at what we had done the last 10 years and saying, if we just take that same approach and apply the same amount of funding, this is probably what we could accomplish if we don't make any significant changes to how we do things. Scenario 2 was something called the Connecting Centers option, and this is the option that was eventually adopted by the council and that we are currently implementing. This was a 6-year plan with a kind of a larger infusion of funding, and that envisions a spine network of all ages and abilities facilities connecting our neighborhood centers and our major destinations like schools and parks, with the intent that we would focus on those areas first, try to get them up to the standards that we would like to have, and then build smaller connections to that spine network after that 6-year period. The last scenario that we considered but did not adopt was what we call the island-wide stretch. That was basically, if you look at that map, you see a lot of project locations there, but these are kind of lower grade projects, things like traffic calming, just expanded shoulders, not necessarily all ages and abilities facilities. If we had chosen this option, we really would have had a hard time, I think, prioritizing these options and getting the community buy-in. So I think we're on the right track and have been built and trying to build our spine network. The working documents really kind of dives into the details of these scenarios. These are examples from the adopted Connecting Centers plan. As you can see, we identified corridors and identified some like really early facility types for those corridors as well. So we had some way to cost out the projects and try to prioritize them. It also included like long, lengthy lists of all the projects and their prioritization. We prioritized them by things, as I mentioned, such as destinations, current bicycle and pedestrian traffic volumes, site distances, things like that, to be able to provide a real prioritized list. And this is something we didn't really have before, and it has really been a key for us to make better, more efficient progress on delivering projects, because people know what we're going to do next and where we're going next. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that too. The project, the plan also includes a series of programs and policies. It's not just a list of projects, things like how to take advantage of safe routes to school programs and rideshare programs, updating our land use code to better represent our desire for non-motorized transportation and multimodal transportation. We actually also included the hire of a new sustainable transportation planning manager for the city that's helping to implement some of these programs that we'll look at in a minute. Looking in depth at some of the projects and programs that we've delivered so far. This is a project we just wrapped up. We're calling it the Bundled Madison Avenue Project. This is what was formerly the city of Winslow, right in kind of the core area of Bainbridge Island. You can see the ferry terminal down there at the very bottom right, the more urbanized area of the island. The project was originally envisioned as just a widened sidewalk in that yellow area and was expanded to include over a mile of non-motorized improvements on what is one of our major corridors. It was broken up into segments. On the south segment, we basically just did an asphalt overlay and paint and lane narrowing. In the central segment, we included raised bike lanes and protected bike lanes, green paint, again, that widened sidewalk, ADA improvements on the west side of the road. On the north segment, which passes by 2 school campuses, we included raised crosswalks with flashing beacons, again, the raised bike lanes and pavement roadway reconstruction, as well as sewer and water main improvements as well, so that we could get all those underground improvements done without having to tear up our new road in a couple of years. On the very north end, we again just kind of did enhanced striping on a roadway that already had existing shoulders. This is what it looks like. So the top is a segment right in front of our school. You can see what the rendering looked like and kind of what the final product looked like. Came out pretty close. This is a segment that shows you a raised bike lane with a wedge curb. We decided to use the wedge curb as opposed to a standard vertical curb because we have quite a few users of electric bikes now, and people really want to be able to pass people who are on acoustic bikes. And so the wedge curb allows folks to enter the roadway and pass somebody safely in the road and then get back onto the protected lane. And people have been pretty happy with it so far. Got a lot of good feedback. One of the ways we've been able to implement this project, which is different than how the city had kind of done things in the past, is by really bundling lots of different funding sources together. We had both federal and state transportation grants in this project. We had American Reinvestment Act grant funds. We have a transportation benefits district that's basically a charge on car tabs in our city that we invested in this. We had some general fund contributions. We also had, as I mentioned, sewer contributions from our sewer and water utility to get underground improvements done at the same time as we're doing improvements on the surface. The next project we have coming up is our Eagle Harbor Wyatt non-motorized project. This is, you can see the Madison project over there on the right, the blue and yellow. So this is the next segment of our connecting centers, which is going to connect our south end of the island to town. Again, we're bundling things together. We're doing non-motorized improvements, fish passage, culverts, and waterline improvements. For those of you not familiar with a fish passage, in Washington, we have spawning salmon, which need better habitat other than culverts to access upstream habitat, which has been a priority for tribal nations here in Washington. And so we're replacing a 30-inch culvert with basically a box culvert bridge. The project also is going to include, again, we've had some success with protection islands for traffic calming and for crossings at some intersections where we have high bicycle and pedestrian usage. We also, again, are implementing our raised bike lane configuration. In this case, we have a kind of a grass median next to our existing sidewalk that we're basically just going to be converting and paving into a raised bike lane, which has saved us some money and also will provide a good level of protection for bicyclists. Here's a picture of the fish passage. This is a real pinch point in the corridor. You can see on the top, there's barely any shoulder, and we have about almost 9,000 vehicles a day coming through here. And believe it or not, people walking and biking, including myself, who bikes to work every day. So the fish passage culvert will provide us a protected bike lane on the southbound side and a buffered shoulder on the right, which will be a really significant improvement for this pinch point in the corridor. As I mentioned, we're bundling things together for this project as well. We've got a number of different grants lined up, our general fund contributions. We've got the Stormwater Fund contributing for our fish passage. And of course, we're doing some water line improvements here too, because every place where we plan on replacing a road, we pretty much have something underneath the road that's old and also needs to be replaced. Our next segment, you can see the Madison in blue and the Eagle Harbor in green. Those are the two projects we're working on now. We have our next segment is kind of the red line on the map, which extends down to one of our neighborhood centers. We have a grant for design for that project, and as I mentioned, you can really start to see the build out of the spine network here. And you know, if there's one takeaway for me from this work we've done with the plan, is that it's really helped focus people and cut down the time that we've been spending on trying to decide where to do projects, as opposed to just focusing on getting them designed and delivered. Because the spine network is, you know, everyone's kind of agreed that that's what we want to do first. And so we are just proceeding along those lines as quickly as we can. Getting those, all these spine network projects done within the originally 6-year timeframe that was envisioned is probably going to be a challenge. We did not bring in the funding that we had really needed to accelerate those projects. But regardless, we are designing and delivering projects along that corridor, and you know, trying to make the best of the resources that we do have. So I had a couple of additional slides here, but I'm going to stop here because it's 9:45, and I think I've expressed a good piece of what I had to say. So thank you again for this opportunity. Looking forward to some questions.
Okay, thanks, Chris. We actually have some time if you want to do the rest of your slides. We have a ton of questions in so far. Maybe give people a few more minutes if they would like to ask additional.
Sure, I'll just take a couple more minutes here. I think what I had next was to talk about programs. Skip this one. Let's see. So some of the programs that we are implementing are related to policy and programs. So we've adopted some multimodal levels of service in our new transportation element of our comprehensive plan, which guides all of our kind of land use and transportation for the city. This was a great tool to get some community input on the types of facilities that we want on different types of roadways. And again, trying to bring people together to have a common understanding of what we're trying to achieve, so that we can avoid rehashing the same decision-making process every time we come up with a new project. We developed a facility typology, so we have common language about the types of facilities we're building for non-motorized facilities. Again, it's another way to just kind of get people on the same page about what it is we're doing. And then lastly, on programs, as I mentioned, we have a sustainable transportation program manager that we hired as a part of this program delivery. We are doing a bike corral. Here's the community. We've had some community involvement on the painting there for the bike corral. We're also doing an e-bike voucher program that has a, you know, is essentially tiered to folks' income, so that we can provide higher vouchers for people with lower incomes, and get people out on e-bikes and using some of our new facilities to take more cars off the road in our community. And lastly, we're also really trying to focus on spot projects. You know, we have an operations and maintenance crew that does lots of great work on our roadways, but we haven't done a lot of like minor shoulder improvements and grading and things like that, just because we're really strapped for resources. But once a year, we at least are trying to use our crew, our in-house crew, just to do some really basic work in areas of high need. This is one of our neighborhood centers where we have people walking to and from some retail and commercial areas from their neighborhoods, and have been asking about shoulders forever. And while building a full shoulder here was going to be a real challenge, we were able to build a kind of a short, at least refuge area for pedestrians walking in this location with our own in-house crew. And that's gotten like a lot of positive feedback from folks. I think folks like seeing you know, their city employees out making improvements in the community, and it's built some goodwill as well. So. maybe we have a question here. Let's see.
We have a couple. Are you done? If you're.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
We'll
can-
stop there.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks so much, Chris, and thank you to all of our presenters today. I think this has been excellent food for thought as we pursue our safety goals here in Central Florida and beyond. So with the time that we have left, we have about 20 minutes left. We'll be taking as many questions as we can from our audience, and I'm going to ask all of our panelists to turn their cameras back on. I see that. Yeah, thank you. We have a few questions that have come in already, but just a quick reminder, you can use the Q&A button on your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And we will go ahead and start with the questions we have received so far. While our speakers are answering, feel free to add more to the list. So let's see. Our first question, I think this is for you ladies from FDOT. With FDOT funding, how are death and serious injury crashes being used to prioritize projects? Is that part of the discussion, and at what point in the process is it discussed?
I'll start and then maybe Celine can chime in. So I'm probably going to take your thunder, Celine. When our maintenance office identifies the roadways, the corridors where the asphalt's starting to deteriorate and we probably need to do a project, every single one of those projects gets looked at from what crashes are happening, what types of crashes, are they one-offs, or man, something's really happening here. So we do use all of that data to help us make those decisions, and I'll let Celine continue.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great comment, Lorraine. Yeah, we look at the last 5 years of certified crash data during our safety and corridor review. We also look at the high injury networks. There's some of those identified in Signal 4. So we identify those. We also have local agencies who have a separate list and categorization for their high injury networks. So we get that feedback as well. And all of that is brought to our technical review meetings where we discuss what the crashes are. Like Lorraine said, sometimes there are one-off crashes or there are things that are correctable, and that's part of the conversation.
Thank you, ladies. All right, I'm going to move on with some other questions. I will note, Joanne, I see your hand raised. Once we get through the questions that have been submitted, we'll go ahead and unmute you so that you can speak. And if there are any others that are having issues typing in your questions, if you want to raise your hand, we can sort of follow that same procedure. So our second question is, I believe, for Chris. How did you select all of the desired scenarios? Was it an internal task force, or was that something the public weighed in on as well?
Yeah, that was a challenging piece of this work. There was a task force involved that had about maybe 12 or so members of the community on the panel. We met pretty frequently to talk about strategies. And one thing I didn't get to say during the presentation is that there's a real divide in our community about the types of improvements that we are building for bikes and peds. There's a group of folks who want to see just the basics get done. They're happy with 4-foot shoulders that aren't even really standard bike lanes. They want to see minor safety improvements done. They're kind of like the core bicyclists and walkers in the community who just want the bare minimum and think that's really all we can afford. And there's another group in the community who says, well, if you're going to build facilities, you should build the best thing you can that can serve everybody, this all ages and abilities approach. And from an equity perspective, the city really tried to lean into that approach as much as we could and say, you're right. If we're going to be building things, they should be for everyone and not just for certain folks. And so I think that really kind of led us down the path to these scenarios because we recognized we couldn't build out the types of facilities we wanted everywhere on the island. And so being able to kind of focus them into the spine network, I think kind of brought a little bit of the two sides together because we recognized that, yeah, we're not going to spend the resources everywhere. We're just going to spend them in some key locations. So far that strategy has stuck. Now, whether it will continue to stick as politics and people change, we don't know. But right now that's, we've been able to stand behind that, which has been a good kind of guidepost for us as we're designing and delivering projects.
Excellent, thank you. All right, our next question is also for you, Chris. Can you please tell us a little more about the wedge curb? I have not seen that before.
Yeah, so the raised bike lane configuration is being used in a lot of different places. A lot of the examples I've seen so far are kind of around on the East Coast. The kind of typical configuration is to have a sidewalk with a slightly lower, like if you had a 6-inch standard curb, you would have a 6-inch raised sidewalk, and then a 3-inch lower down to the bike lane, and then another 3 inches down to the roadway, and all of them right next to each other. Our configuration is similar to that, although in some cases we have a full 6-inch separation from the roadway and no vertical separation between the sidewalk and the bike lane at all. In these, as I mentioned, we have a lot of folks using e-bikes, and so we had heard from folks who said, you know, I'd love to be able to use this raised bike lane, but I don't want to get stuck behind somebody who's going, because we have a lot of significant hills in our community. So I don't want to get stuck behind somebody going uphill that I can't figure out how to get around them. I can't get off the curb safely. So we're basically using this rolled or wedge curb condition so that folks can kind of ride off the raised bike lane into the travel lane if they feel safe enough to do that and pass somebody. And so far, you know, it's been a mixed bag. I think I stand by the decision to include those. We've had folks say, well, a vertical curb provides better protection from vehicles, for kids, and which it does. There's no doubt about that. But we're still, I think that, you know, the trade-off of that is we are providing a lot more additional space for bicyclists, so and for walkers. So even if there isn't that vertical separation to provide safety from vehicles, there's still a lot of room next to the roadway for bicyclists to ride pretty far away from traffic. And most of our roadways are 25 and 30 miles an hour. So, you know, we're really looking at pretty low speeds in most locations. If you're in a community where you have, you know, 40, 45 mile an hour speed limits in these sorts of conditions, you probably want to go with a regular vertical curb to provide that level of safety.
All right, thanks, Chris. All right, Taylor, we have one for you. If a project falls into multiple categories, how is the funding bucket determined?
All right. So with our needs assessment with the 2050 MTP, we started with individual modal evaluations. We looked at bicycle and pedestrian by itself, active transportation by itself, TISMO, those technology and operation improvements by themselves, and kind of went through the full gambit of the options that way, looking at what those independent needs were. Then we went through a consolidation exercise with each of our local agencies to look at what all improvements were proposed for a single area to see if it made sense for those projects to be grouped together into what we were affectionately calling a completing the street. We're going to make that a verb project. So that way you could go out and do all of the improvements that were necessary at the same time. So if those particular needs stayed true to what their original modal category was, that is the funding bucket that they lived in. But if it turned into a grouped project where it was multiple needs put together into one, it likely fell into the completing the street type category, or whatever the main driver of that project cost ended up being.
Well done. Thank you. All right. Our next question is back to you, Chris. Are there different needs or requirements for bike ped facilities in the north considering snow? Do people bike in the winter? Sorry if this is silly. I'm a born and raised Floridian.
Yeah, good question. We do have snow periodically, but it's not a guaranteed thing every year. So we have folks riding, including myself, who ride bikes, 365 days a year here, with mostly what we contend with in terms of safety is darkness. We have really dark winters here where it doesn't get light until 10 o'clock and gets dark again at 3:30. So we have bicyclists riding a lot in areas that aren't well lit, and we are a fairly rural community. And so there's a real push and pull between, folks who want to see more lighting and folks that want to have, protect our dark sky ordinance. So that's really more where we've been focusing, is trying to get targeted locations for lighting improvements. And interestingly enough, even though people initially kind of push back on lighting, once the improvements are in place, we usually get a lot of positive feedback from folks saying, "Oh boy, I'm so glad that intersection is lit up now. I can see people so much better." And as long as we kind of do it in a targeted way, we've got some good feedback. In terms of snow plowing, the one thing I think that we've done to try to aid, snow removals operations is to provide vertical posts in places where we have obstructions in the road. Like if we have physical curbs that are separating the bike lane, if we have bulb outs and things like that that you can't really see if it snows, we've been providing vertical barriers to provide some guidance to folks doing snowplow removal. So, which I guess you probably don't have to deal with now. You got other issues to deal with in Florida besides snow.
We have other issues indeed. All right, thanks so much, Chris. Well, that appears to be our final question that we've received in the Q&A box. So Rachel, if you could go ahead and unmute Joanne so she can share her comment or question.
Yeah, when are we going to get 24 hours bus and train service, including the holidays, weekends, and nighttime?
We are working to provide the best that we can. Thank you for joining us today, Joanne.
Oh, let me give you my address. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I'm Joanne Canellas. My address is 324 Claremont Avenue, Lake Mary, Florida, 32746. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. We appreciate your comment. Thank you for joining us. Is there
Oh,
anyone
you're
else?
welcome.
All
My
right.
pleasure.
Seeing any other hands raised or questions that came in. So with that, I want to thank all of you that took the time to submit such good questions for us today. We can go ahead and move to wrap up. Just want to thank everyone who contributed to today's webinar, to our speakers, and to all of you who are working to bring an end to traffic deaths and serious injuries. We really truly appreciate your interest in eliminating traffic deaths and serious injuries, and it's going to take all of us working together to make it happen. So a few housekeeping items to wrap us up. First, the recording of this webinar will be on the MetroPlan Orlando YouTube channel, and registrants will receive an email with the link following the webinar. If you have any ideas for specific topics we can cover as part of the speaker series, we encourage you to email your suggestions to visionzero@metroplanorlando.gov. I'm going to put that email address in the chat here shortly. And if you would like to continue to follow the progress of Vision Zero Central Florida or get notifications about future speaker series events, please do go sign up at our constant contact email updates at visionzerocfl.gov. And in the meantime, we hope you'll join us on this quest to reach zero traffic deaths in Central Florida and do your part to work for a safer transportation system. We can get to zero together. Thank you.